Sorry about that, jerk faces. Technical difficulties. It's just just one of those nights. But we're
This is what
back.
happens. But this is what happens when I talk about crazy people. Is they come out.
I know, right? You're jinxing the stream, dude. What's the matter with you?
I should just left it alone.
I know. Just don't invite that bad juju into the stream. But let me just pick up where I kind of left off, and that was I'm finishing out what I did from the weekend because it was also my mother's birthday, and in a very uncharacteristic move, she pulled the birthday card and demanded that we do something. But it wasn't anything grand or terribly expensive. It was just she just wanted the entire family to spend the day together and to go see the poppies.
Oh yeah, I saw those pictures that you took with your mom.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very it's very uncharacteristic of her because she's usually just content with just spending having a dinner together and just spending time at home. But yeah, I guess she really wanted to capitalize on seeing the poppies, although she has already seen the poppies, more than once. To which I didn't I found out on the ride up there, she's like, oh, there's like so many less poppies than there were last time. I'm just like, whoa, what do you mean last time? But I love my mother, so of course it doesn't matter. It's the first time for me to go see them. So if my mom is happy to, what was that?
I said fucking mama's boy.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with being loving your mother, all right?
It's okay. I love my mom too, so.
Yeah, it's just I just thought it was funny that my mom had already gone to see them, and I'm but it was nice of her to want to go and spend the day with her children, and her
Yeah, no, that's sounds like a good time.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was cool. Yeah, I actually this is my first time actually going to see the poppies. I've never actually done it before, previously, or maybe my parents took me as a kid, but it was so long ago I don't even remember. Right? It's kind of like the Grand Canyon thing because there's pictures of me at Grand Canyon, but I was so young that I don't I have no memory of it.
Recollect, yeah. I have the accounts like that too, where it's like, I was there, but I don't remember it.
Yeah. So I technically I have been there, but I just don't remember. All right. Anyway, we got hopefully nothing else goes wrong, but we got a nice show in store for you tonight. We'll be talking about various things going on in the news, and also our movie review for this week is Death to Smoochy. So look forward to that.
Oh yeah.
What would you like to begin? Would you like to begin with what was that?
I would say I think we should start with talking about the fire at the Notre Dame Cathedral.
Okay, yeah.
And then we'll talk about that.
So current events first. Okay. So yes, for those of you who don't, who don't happen to carry the internet around with them everywhere they go, yesterday at around 7 or so local time in Paris, France, the Notre Dame Cathedral caught fire. It's it was built in the what was it, the 11th century?
Oh, it's 12th century. 14th century. I think it was like
14th century.
1300s.
14th century.
Yeah.
14th century, and it's withstood wars and plagues and famines and revolutions and world wars, and yet, it finally succumbed to fire.
Well, they had been doing some renovations on the cathedral.
Mm-hmm.
I guess they were updating some things, and it appears now that it was something. They're saying it was just kind of like something accidental that sparked the fire, and yeah, they were worried that it may have that it was like going to damage it like permanently, like damage the structure to where they weren't sure they were going to be able to save it, but it appears like that's not the case. I mean, yeah, there's stuff that's destroyed that they'll never be able to regain back, but much of it, like they're going to be able to save the cathedral, which is a good thing. And it also shows you they were marveling at the architecture of how it was built, that it was meant to withstand fires, like the rib structure with the buttresses that they worked on, like that medieval architecture. It's just how well it was built is testament to how it stood for so long. And so, yeah, I mean, that's a good thing. But man, some of the surrounding stuff that like it was going on around there, because in France there have been, I've heard his numbers as high as like some 800 like churches that have been burned down by either Islamic extremists or crazy socialists, that French leftists that have been burning churches down. And I mean, obviously, like, they weren't as famous as the Notre Dame Cathedral, but still. And then even while the cathedral was burning down, there was various live stream videos of people watching what was going on, and just the ugliness of some of the comments and stuff that were being said about it is just pretty horrible.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I assume that you're alluding to that video that Paul Joseph Watson put out, where people of a certain persuasion were responding to the to the burning of Notre Dame Cathedral, with laughing emojis.
Yeah.
During one live stream, and it was really just disgusting. Just to be frank, because how is something that that has stood for 800 years, that catches fire, how is that a laughing matter? How it's like one of the, and it's I think it was, it was dubbed one of those like special like international like cultural sites. That it's not just a treasure for France, but it's a treasure for all humanity.
Right.
I mean, granted, it wasn't as though it was the holy city. It was the holy city, the Vatican.
It's one of those things where, listen, as a Christian, we don't believe that God is God is stuck in the building. We're like, we're losing touch with God. I mean, we will move on. God lives within us, but as someone that loves history and Um, just that's a part of church history that should
Right.
be preserved.
Hmm.
And the fact is a lot of these assholes from whether it's these Islamic extremists or socialist you know socialist atheists that they want to watch the world burn and create nothing in its wake, nothing of importance at least, and
Yeah, I
to
think.
watch them just kind of laugh in glee. So some of the comments and the everything is like they're relishing in the fact that, oh,
Right. I
thank
think.
God, there's too
Yeah, I
bad
think.
there's not like burned bodies in there. There's not there weren't people in there burning to death. It's like Jesus, that's some horrific stuff.
Yeah, I mean, pretty wild things. I remember. I believe seeing one tweet of someone saying like, oh, this is what you get for your colonial past or whatever, and it's just like it shouldn't be all that surprising, given the times that we live, where we're constantly told that we don't matter, we're nothing more than a clump of cells. um, so it shouldn't really be that much of a surprise to see these nihilistic people put out such morose and just straight out hopeless kind of tweets, because they these people aren't told that they're valuable, that they're that to kind of borrow a line from Yoda, it's like it's like, we're not this crude matter, luminous beings are we, and
Right.
and I think and the cathedral was a celebration of the divine inspiration, the connection between between humans and God, and and for people to just like have no have no, who don't know their own value, who don't see them like how the Father sees them, that's what's sad. I think ultimately.
Yeah, and it's this revisionist history that's gone on in the last, you know
50 or so
I would
years.
say century, yeah, 50 to 100 years, where, oh well, the West is terrible and we've done all this, there's all this imperialism and all this subjugation. It's like, that's actually really not the case. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, bad things have happened through any, you look at any country in the world, pretty much all of them, they've all done something, all done terrible things. Everyone has a dark history. But the thing is, there's also a lot of good things that have occurred through history, and Western civilization, for the most part, has done a lot of good and made the world a better place.
Mm-hmm.
It and why we have any sort of freedom and some peace within the world is due to Western civilization.
Mm-hmm.
Now people are going to take that out of context, like, you're a white nationalist. Like, that's not what Western civilization is about. Western civilization is a group of ideas and morals that have been passed on, and the reason why you can act like a
Complete
raging
jackass.
cunt, yeah, if you want to be, and you're going to be pretty much not bothered. Um, so it bothers me because the the generation that is just wants for there to be a complete destruction. They want to watch the world burn, but they have no ideas to rebuild it back.
Right. Yeah, because they think that that this current system, or the society that we have now is so irredeemable that it has to be hard reset, raise it to the ground. But they don't have they don't have any ideas on how to make it better. I mean, or they kind of default to like the whole like socialist idea. And it's like, oh, let's just uh, you know uh, the government will take care of everything. And it's just like, no.
When has the government ever really done anything ever in history? That's what I would
or
like
like
to know.
any government. What has any government done that was I mean, because I always reminded of this story I heard, about when Samuel Morse first developed the telegraph, and the government came to him and said, hey, we want you to, this is, the telegraph thing is really great, and we can really open up communications throughout the country. So we want you to say we'll give you money, and set up whatever you have to do to get the telegraph all over the country. And Samuel Morse, you know um, in a in a in a stroke of naivete, he said like, oh, you know what, I'm not really, my mind, I created this thing, yes, but I don't really have a mind to how to expand it. But I'm sure, you guys, you, the government, can surely, expand this better than me.
Oh,
And
man.
so he gave him all this. I don't know if he signed over the patent or whatever, but he basically gave it to the government for them to expand the telegraph system. And I think in 2 years they barely got like New York to Washington D.C. Wired up. And so they're and then they're like, we can't do this. We don't we're not really designed for this sort of thing. So then they outsourced it to the private sector. I think to a budding AT&T, or some sort of or one of the bells. And within a year, they are able to get all the way up and down the eastern seaboard, and uh, up into north, like northeast Canada, and I think maybe even into like Greenland. I think it was more, but I don't want to like say that they got it all the way to Europe, but they were able to do a lot more because because they're a private company. There's less bureaucracy, less bloat in a private company. They were able to expand like crazy and within a shorter amount of time. So this idea that the government can like fix all our ills and provide for us is just complete idiocy.
Yeah. That was the same with the railways too.
Mm-hmm.
The government, like when the government was involved in trying to expand the railways, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they couldn't do it. It took them forever, and then the private sector lines ended up, they were across the continent in no time.
Right.
But this isn't just like, yeah, and obviously we're showing some American government examples, but this is any government that tries to get involved with anything. It's too much fucking bureaucracy,
Mm-hmm.
ineptitude, and just people who don't belong, who have no intelligence, no thought for anything,
Mm-hmm.
and no ingenuity.
Right. I think the perfect example of government incompetence. If you ever need a refresher, just go to your local DMV.
God.
Just yeah, I mean, if anyone is, anyone who's dealt with the DMV, to to get their license or to renew their license or what have you, just imagine that. But like, just like, if you just need a reminder of how crappy government is, just take a look at the DMV, because that is government waste and incompetence, you know, at a more digestible level.
That is where dreams go to die.
Right. I mean, any interaction you have with someone, with an employee of the DMV is just like they hate it. They hate being there. They like resent being there, and they resent you for even coming to try and get your business done. It's like what it's like it's like, well, it's your job to fucking help be there and to facilitate the services, but but the people there resent you for it.
It's crazy because I can see a little bit of both sides where you get like obviously like you get people there like that work there that hate being there, but I think a few of them have been worn down so much where it's like they deal with these fucking wackos like at the post office, and it's like they just get worn to the ground where it's like I've had it. I've had enough. I've had enough of this crap.
Well, yeah, okay, that's fair.
But no, but the thing is, like, it's also. But here's the other thing too: is it's a lot of the people that do work there. Like, I think it's incompetence and laziness because where else are you gonna go?
Exactly.
Where else are you gonna go?
That's exactly right.
It's a monopoly. That's what it is. Where else are you gonna go? You have to be here, so we can do whatever.
You have to go through us. So if we want, we could make you sit there for like another 3 hours, and then close it down just because they feel like it. But I mean, to get it back to Notre Dame, it's like a lot of people are saying that that the burning down of Notre Dame is kind of a symbol of the times of this disconnection from our past, and disconnect from leaders to their people. And it's not as though that I totally disagree with that. I think to a certain degree this tragedy does symbolize those things.
Yeah, I can see that. And maybe is a kind of the optimistic version of me is saying it's like, okay, we have one of the great pieces of church history burning, and I think it's also a good opportunity to share the gospel, to share it's not about this building, but it does represent something. And what does it represent? And that it can create opportunities to share the gospel, especially in like a place like, especially in a place like Paris and other areas of France, which have are pretty much it's spiritually dead, I would say.
Right. Yeah, I mean again, even though it's kind of a tragedy as in a cultural or historic sense, it's I can't help but feel that this is God saying this is kind of like divine judgment in a way. It's like you take pride in this thing, but you don't exemplify the things that it represents. Compassion, mercy, grace, forgiveness, redemption. If the country no longer exemplifies those virtues, then what good is this building? And you have a leader that that fancies himself a god, and so you can kind of see it as you can kind of see this as divine. I don't want to say punishment, but let's say discipline, divine discipline.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's pretty horrible. But yeah, it's I don't know. Europe is kind of on that it definitely spiritually dead scale, if not
And it's
you know,
interesting
but
because even though that they don't have a rule about the separation of church and state, European countries seem to be more atheistic than the United States, which does have uh, uh, you know a church and state separation kind of clause.
and let's be honest with that. What that means, that doesn't mean that there can't be any sort of religious symbols
Government,
within government,
right?
but it's not what it is. Is there can't be the government will not be a sponsor to a particular you know church or religion, as it
Right.
was in England with like the Anglican Church, which is the Church of England, which where people were, if they didn't go there, in some cases they were killed or arrested.
There
That
you
was
go.
what they were trying to
That's
avoid.
exactly right. Yeah, because everyone says like
And there,
everyone cites like, oh, separation of church and state, because Pence said that he wouldn't that because Pence prayed before his lunch or whatever. Was like that's not what it
and
was
that the
talking
other
about.
thing too is they're getting that too from writings of Thomas Jefferson, not from the actual like Declaration or the Constitution. That was never in there. It was from Thomas Jefferson's writings talking about that stuff, and he was talking about like, yeah, we shouldn't that we should not have a state-sponsored church.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so basically saying that the government can't say you are now a Christian, or the or
Right.
or even a state run religion.
Yeah, that was never going to happen.
Yeah. So,
But
I mean,
yeah, we're
I think the fire has been contained, and it wasn't a total loss. So I think we lucked out in that.
well, like I said, it's the building's not lost. It structurally, it's still that was what they were really worried about, and they're finding at least some of like the stained glass windows they're going to be able to recover.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the other artifacts will be able to be recovered. So I mean that's good news. I mean, at least not everything was lost.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like you're getting some crazy BuzzFeedy type articles talking about like should we rebuild Notre Dame as it was, or make it something that can be turned into this like museum or what, which is
Right,
like
right. Yeah, I mean, just before we, came live, one of our buddies, Matt, sent us a quick article about how, they were we entertaining that exact question, whether or not, they're going to preserve the history and, the history and the culture of, the cathedral, or are they going to build something to reflect more of this multicultural utopian fantasy stuff. And I really hope it's the former and not the latter.
yeah, because I mean it was still being used as a cathedral, wasn't it? Didn't they have like
Yeah, I mean they still had
masses and
mass.
stuff there?
I think they still had mass every Sunday, and even though it was again like a tourist attraction, I think it was still used for official church things.
Okay. I hope that that's the case, that they restore it back to the way it was as best they
Mm-hmm.
can, and so that people have a place to go and worship. For the like 5 Christians that are left in France.
Seriously, I mean, Yep.
Which is kind of a shame because a lot of the great theologians and Christian thinkers, were, they were from France. Like there a lot of the old like medieval like church writings and stuff. They were all from like France and Germany and England and all those places during that
Mm-hmm.
time.
Or so hoping for the
But
best.
yeah, but as I said, which will kind of help us transition to our next topic, is that something like this, hopefully we'll be able to promote sharing of the gospel, and which is perfect for a week like this week because it is known in the Christian circles as Passion Week, which started from Sunday, which was Palm Sunday, and leads up into Good Friday and Easter. And it's pretty much like this is the kind of where we celebrate the Jesus's last week before he was crucified on the cross. And yeah, it's just I think that this is one of those like really important weeks in the Christian calendar, that I think helps us to remember why we're Christians, and just seeing the remembering the magnitude of what was done for us. I know this is like to me like this is my favorite time of the year,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean every Sunday is technically a celebration of the resurrection, as it should be. But this week in particular is kind of a remembrance and celebration of everything that took place, that happened. Um, do you have any particular like thoughts or anything concerning like Passion Week? Is there anything that you like to do or anything like that, Andy?
Not specifically. Uh, what is it? I just kind of do the typical thing. Just going, doing Good Friday service, going to Easter, service as well. Um, although well, seeing as you're a Bible study, maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong. But I heard that that the Gospels spent, or the Gospels spend a certain, I can forget what percentage. Like I think a quarter, no, more than a quarter of the Gospels focus on this week. Yeah, and when I heard that, I found out that was pretty significant. Uh, because you would think like, oh, focus, on the teaching, or kind of, just on Jesus' ministry or his healings or things like that. But no, like, the Gospels, they all focus the majority of their chapters, on this week. And I think that shouldn't surprise anybody because it's the most significant and influential thing that happened in human history.
Yeah. Well, and there was a lot that Jesus did during this week. Kind of knowing, because he knew what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But then, I've heard a couple of different arguments concerning what Palm Sunday is. There was a time where point where Jesus was entering into Jerusalem, and this was the time of
The triumphant entry.
all the Jews coming in for the Passover celebration. A lot of Jews traveled from, all around where they were from, and would travel to the temple in
Mm-hmm.
Jerusalem. It's been done for many years, and there was a lot of buzz around Jesus and the Messiah and all
Right.
that.
This was the height of Jesus's, I guess, fame or popularity. They got Jesus, or the apostles were instructed to. But they got him a donkey to ride in on. People tore off palm branches. And laid them down or laid down their cloaks for kind of his procession, kind of like a king.
Right. Well, and that was because I think this is what many of what the apostles were thinking that he was, and I think a lot of the people that were celebrating him is like they thought, because a lot of people thought that he was going to be the king that was going to come and overthrow Rome and restore the kingdom of Israel, which is partly true in a sense. I mean, that comes a little bit later on, but at this time, that was not what Jesus was meant to do. But that was the thought process with many Jews at the time, is that he was going to overthrow Rome and restore the kingdom of Israel. And a lot of people think that those same people who were celebrating Christ were the same ones that they ended up turning on him, just a few days later. I'm maybe in the minority that I don't think that was the case, because for that to have happened seems a little schizophrenic in that case, just because all the happenings that were going on with Judas's betrayal and how everything was kind of done under the cloak of darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, where you had the the temple leadership that was kind of condemning him, putting him on trial and all that stuff. It all happened under the cover of darkness. So these same people that were celebrating him just days before, I don't think that they were the same people, because all that stuff was done under the cover of darkness, and the crowd that was there was more of this, they were probably part of the, I think it was another crowd that did not want him, or that they thought he was, something else, but I don't know. It's that
this might have been the first example of astroturfing.
Yeah, I think so.
Because again, it could have been the Pharisees or the Sanhedrin, and anyone in like the ruling class, it's getting people to come and sneer and jeer at Jesus.
Yeah, because I mean the ones that didn't really want him were, a majority of them were like, the Sadducees, the Sanhedrin, all kind of the Jewish royalty in a lot of sense. And I'm sure you had some of the Pharisees in there too, but it was that crowd that was constantly trying to trip him up with these questions and ideas, and it's like, and that he would in a sense kind of humiliate them.
Right. He would just own them. Because, it's kind of the whole is it right or moral to pay taxes to the Romans? And then he goes, it's like, whose face is on this coin? It's like, Caesar's. Like, well, give to Caesar what's Caesar's, and give to God what's God's.
Well, the other thing that
I mean, being God, himself, he just expertly is able to, dodge those booby traps that the elites set for him.
And you had in a couple of cases too. So throughout the Gospels, there was Jesus, when he would have his famous "I am" sayings. Mm-hmm. The wording there is the same as when Moses encountered God at the burning bush. I am who I am.
Hmm.
it's the same wording, although
Right.
it's in
Yeah. It's
Greek,
just
but
yeah, slightly different. Moses asks, when he's commissioned by God to go back into Egypt and to confront Pharaoh, he says like, "Oh, who should I say has sent me?" And then in the whole burning bush scene, it says, I am, I am who I am, or I am, or
yeah, and so that's essentially what Jesus is saying. So you have the teachers who were blinded to who he was, and it's like and you'd have, I mean, they were furious with him because how dare you take on, because they knew what he was saying. It's like he was essentially, that wording was saying that I'm God, and so there was people who couldn't see him for who he was, rightfully pissed off. I would think if you're blinded to that stuff, yeah, if that's blasphemy. Then you have the people like the Sadducees who those were the guys that were in kind of their whole thing revolved around the temple. They were the guys that were in charge of like all like the money changers and all that stuff. That's how they were making their money. And when Jesus overthrew like the money changers, and it's like these people are stopping people from coming to worship as they should, and so they were pissed off at him, and they were all
right,
they were all looking
because they
for,
were getting they're like the vendors or whatever, they were giving a cut to Sadducees.
yeah, and
Right, and I
so
mean,
they
it's
were,
not as though Jesus was mad that there were vendors, because or more typically the vendors would be outside of the temple um, walls, and they'd be selling like the doves and the sacrifice things outside on on the street on the way into uh, the temple, and also the temple, like the courtyard area that that they had set up in was reserved for people to come and worship, and I think particularly specifically those who were not Jewish.
yeah, it was set up in the court of the Gentiles is where all that stuff was
Right.
set up.
And so yeah, it was just like, and so like because they set up there, they were then hindering people to come from coming and worshiping.
And then
Um,
you have Judas, who he was God's, he was Jesus's, he was kind of the guy that was taking in all like this, like the donations and all that stuff. And
mhm.
there was rumor that he was actually like potentially like siphoning off money. He was embezzling money for one. And
Ah,
then the other thing too is that what he started, there was a time where he started to realize that that like many of the others, like he saw that, oh, he's not going to overthrow the Romans. Like he was actually the first one to realize like that he, not that Jesus was like a fake, but it was like he's not doing what we're all thinking he's going to be doing. It's something
right.
else at
Judas
hand.
thought Jesus was more of a political revolutionary,
Well,
and he was
they all did. In a case, I think a lot of them did, and Judas was the first to realize that like that's not what's happening, and that's why he ended up looking to betray Jesus. And it's like, well, I'm going to make some money off of this because I know that they are looking for an opening. And yeah, that was how it all got started. But it was, and then you have like the interesting theological wrestling of, and this goes to like the whole free will predestination thing. It's like, well, Jesus had to die for our benefit. He was uh, that was kind of like what God knew had to happen. So was it necessary that like Judas was chosen by God to be the betrayer, or is it just Judas based off of his own
right. That was,
failings
or
and
yeah,
personality?
was it God that chose Judas for the role, or was he just always meant to be the betrayer?
Yeah, and that I mean that gets into some like sticky theological territory too. But it's and I actually think that as it goes past, because Judas ends up feels he has tremendous guilt over what he did, and he ends up obviously like throwing the blood money back at them. He rejects it, and then he ends up committing suicide. And the funny thing is, like, you have after the ascension, after Jesus, ascends into heaven, they have a time where they pray to replace Judas as the one of the apostles. They have Matthias, but you never hear about Matthias again. Whereas, like, Paul was actually ended up being technically, I think, the replacement to Judas, because he, as being a guy who
Well,
obviously he wrote,
it was
like,
first Stephen, correct? They first decided that it was Stephen, and then he was martyred, and then
no, because the calling of Matthias happened before Stephen was martyred. Because but
right,
I think
it was
that
between Stephen and somebody else, and then Stephen goes and he gets martyred, and then which leaves the spot open again. No, or am I
no.
remembering it wrong?
Stephen, no. You're while he was one of the, like, many disciples, he was not. The Stephen that was martyred, I don't think was one of the 12. I believe he was. I could be wrong about that. It's been a while since I've read Acts, actually. But no, what I'm saying is, like, with Matthias was the one that was chosen as the 12th, the replacement.
Yeah.
Well, we kind of never hear about him again. But we have Paul, who was, in a sense, kind of like a Judas, who was, killing all these, Christians, being kind of with a lot of zeal, and then was encountered the resurrected Christ and ended up becoming arguably the greatest of the apostles, and obviously wrote nearly half the Old Testament.
All the epistles. Here's a nifty hypothetical. If Judas didn't kill himself, do you think Jesus would have redeemed him?
Yeah,
after the 3 days.
Absolutely. I mean,
I would believe that as well.
Because of course, I think Jesus knew exactly, what. Because if you think about it, like, he chose Judas, probably knowing exactly what Judas was going to do, several years down the road.
Mm-hmm.
And same as, like, he chose Peter, knowing Peter was going to betray him, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think but the whole point is, they failed as as his followers and all that stuff, but technically it's kind of it points to a bigger picture, is that we've all failed God in that way. We've all betrayed him. We've all kind of, in a sense, spat in his face and done all this stuff. Yet he still went to the cross and willingly, died on the cross for all of us. All the past sins, all the present sins, all the future sins. That's what he went on the cross for.
For all eternity. For all eternity, his blood covers us.
And so I think that, of course he would have redeemed Judas. And I think had Judas not killed himself, we would be talking. I believe that we would be reading a lot of Judas's work. Judas would have written half the New Testament. I think he would have been the most zealous, guy.
The most zealot apostle of the 12.
I think that would be what would happen.
Right. Yeah, and I guess trying to follow up. So yeah, I think that God, I think God had to pick Paul, because he was doing, because again, he was doing such heinous things that, against Christians, that his redemption would have, I think would have, his Paul's redemption um, would have made the right impact uh, for the time, and I think it was almost kind of like a plan B because Judas killed himself, and that if
Right.
he and if he didn't kill himself and he was and Jesus did redeem him after his resurrection, then I think we'd have books written by Judas Iscariot, the most zealot of the most zealous of the 12 apostles.
Yeah, and it's just I think it's an interesting thought experiment, at least.
Right.
And
but I think God knew that there needed to be something that to that level where Judas betrays God, betrays Jesus, betrays God essentially, but then because of his divine his infinite and divine grace, he forgives Judas, and he goes for even more fervently spreading the gospel. But because I think maybe again, kind of doing like the hypotheticals, maybe that was the plan all along. But Jesus, Judas took it into his own hands, and he just couldn't live with what he did, and he killed himself. And God kind of had to improvise. Not literally, because God knows everything, so nothing is really out of his plan.
Right. But it was one of those things where, because in all the apostles pretty much kind of went back to well, I guess that's that, and they kind of went back home and did their own thing. Right. Until they encountered the resurrected Christ, and it's like, oh crap, and he restored them, and they were never the same again. Mm-hmm. And I guarantee that would have happened with Judas.
Agreed.
But and that also makes me wonder too, would Judas, be, would we meet him in heaven? That's an interesting thought too. And that's something that we can never truly know, because we don't know Judas's heart, or and that whole time period is kind of interesting with because you're kind of in between the Old and New Testament, and what it took to be a believer at the time is kind of a interesting thought experiment too. And
I mean, maybe we can save it. Maybe we can save it for a different nocturnal transmission or different podcast.
Yeah, but I'm gonna say one last thing before we kind of move on to the movie review. Is that the importance of this week. It really doesn't matter what you've done, where you come from, who you are. The gospel message is one for everybody. And it's not about how smart you are, or how many good things you do, how many bad things you've done. Doesn't matter even if you're currently in kind of a rough situation, and it's also not a magical formula where everything's going to be hunky-dory after you accept the gospel. But it's the gospel is for every person, every man, every woman, every Jew, every Greek. Doesn't matter who. That Christ died on that cross for you, and he rose again so that we could have eternal life. And I encourage you to read the Gospels and to kind of see for yourself. I hope we pray for you, and we hope that you accept the gospel. And even if you don't accept it, we'd still love to talk to you. So you go ahead and comment, and do all that good stuff, afterwards.
Yeah, you dirty heathens.
Yeah.
Anyways, all right. Yeah, I think we've said all that we can about that. So let's round out the evening with our movie review, and that is Death to Smoochy, which came out surprisingly a year after 9/11. Not an exact year,
Like,
but actually, yes, like just a few months after 9/11.
oh wow, I
Yeah,
didn't realize it was.
it came out February. It released February 28th, 2002.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, so this movie came out like fresh off of 9/11. But yes,
What were your thoughts on the movie, Andy?
I think overall I liked it. But let me just give you a quick kind of synopsis of the movie. What is it? Well, Smoochy is a dark comedy about the seedy kind of underbelly of children's television programming. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's you know uh, it's the story of Rainbow Randolph, who's played by the late Robin Williams. Um, he's a very he's a very popular television children's television host, but he gets embroiled in a bribery scandal and subsequently fired from his TV show. And in a panic, the executives of the network uh, endeavor to find a morally upstanding, squeaky clean new TV host, and they do that in Sheldon Mopes, played by Edward Norton, and his character of Smoochy. And after much success, Smoochy is catapulted to fame, and what is it? Rainbow Randolph is throughout the movie is trying to destroy Smoochy, and and try to reclaim his his fame and time slot or TV show at the network. And with all that being said, I will still say I really enjoyed this movie. I enjoyed the very first time I saw it back in like the early 2000s. Watching it again, I still enjoy it. It's really great fun. It's kind of a zany premise of talking about the kind of seedier side of children's television. With all like the deals, making money off of toys and advertisements, and doing like and working with certain charities. Um, they kind of make it out to be like this kind of mafia style movie, about children's television shows.
And all these like past children's show hosts who've been like, oh yeah, he's a smack hound, and like all these like
Right, yeah.
They all these guys have had like these horrible vices and like have been which has cost them like their show. And it's like they
Right, yeah,
come
because
out of the
even
woodwork to try to
there's that
destroy
scene
Smoochy.
where the two executives are going down the list of possible replacements, and they're just like, oh, he's a cokehead, or he diddles kids, or on and on and on.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, and then like they finally get down to Edward Norton's character, Sheldon Mopes, and then I guess he does have a reputation of being like you know so clean, he makes Mr. Clean look dirty by comparison.
Yeah.
And so what was it? Catherine Keener, her character.
It's Nora.
Nora, that's right, Nora. She is sent down to go recruit him, and she's I guess because she's been in the business for so long, she's a bit jaded, at Sheldon's supposed almost Brady Bunch levels of wholesomeness.
Yeah.
And but she eventually falls for him because of his upstanding morals.
Yeah, the whole movie is just it's like a zany, like dark zany fun. I mean, it's you had like I said, all these people that are trying to get a piece of Smoochy to like kind of in a way corrupt him. And say what you will about Sheldon Mopes, he kind of starts off as this weird soy boy eating his soy dogs with almond butter that he carries.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And just kind of this like goofy, wholesome like attitude. But he in the entire film, despite all the things that like people try to get him to do to compromise, he never once compromises his values.
Right. Yeah. No matter like how many like temptations or prodding that that the execs do, or like his newly signed manager does, he remains true to his convictions and to his integrity. And yeah, Robert, before during the day we were kind of talking about it, and he was talking about how Sheldon's a soy boy, and I was like, yeah, he's a soy boy, but he sticks to his convictions and keeps his integrity, and for that I could respect him for that.
Yeah, and he was of all the people there, he was the only one that gave a damn about the kids.
Right, because one of the I guess story like subplots is that every children's television host does an ice show, and the ice show is just a way to make it's supposed to be for charity and to raise money for whatever some charity, but it's also a way to kind of skim off the top, through vendors and merchandise and and ticket sales and what have you. But Sheldon is staunchly against such things. Um, but he eventually comes after we're kind of jumping around here a bit. But he eventually decides to do it. But he says it's like, oh, like no one's gonna make make a cent off this, and all the proceeds are gonna go to where they're supposed to be for the children's hospital or whatever such charity. And of course, like his handlers are freaking out because like no one does this. No one goes against this charity or that charity, because it seems like they make it even sound like the charities themselves are in it for for to make a little to skim a little bit off the top as well.
Well, that's true in real life too, but that's a
right.
Story.
I mean, it's there's some reality in this movie, even though the kind of like kind of high energy zaniness that is involved. But yeah, there's a kernel of truth in that. And so he's like saying like, oh, Sheldon's character says like, oh, I'm gonna pay for everything. I'm gonna pay for the unsalted pretzels and like the vegetable juice, and no one's gonna make a dime out of this, and all the money that's raised is gonna go straight to the actual charity, the people who actually need it. And again, his handlers are freak out, and so they hire this old children's television host who is now a junkie, and they promise him if they hire him as a hitman, and and they promise him if they assassinate Sheldon, then they'll give him back his TV show, and he'll be back on top.
Yeah, it's well, it's like the because initially, like when he was starting to do his the ice show and was saying this stuff, the guy who ran one of the charities, who was um, he was like, all right, well, we got to get rid of this guy. And earlier in the movie, there's this Irish mob group that runs this restaurant that they all seem to eat at for some reason. And one of the sons of the lady, the lady mobster who runs the front is an old boxer named Spinner Dunn, who has been hit in the head a few too many times.
Right, yeah. And
And
what is like he has the disposition, or was it Edward Norton's character Sheldon? He says like, oh, he has the disposition of a 5-year-old.
yeah, and so so because he's like, he kind of like, he's such a nice guy. It's like, so he kind of gives him this like kind of bit part in the shows that he could be a part of it, and because he likes Smoochy a lot. And it's like, and then initially he was like kind of like one of the cowbell guys who like he couldn't.
Yeah, he was he's the cowboy guy in the band. But he was of course he was offbeat, and the mob lady.
It's like, give him anything that doesn't have like a horn or a bell or anything.
Yeah, anything that makes too much noise. Tommy Cotter. That was the character's name. Yeah, she was like basically saying like, oh, can you it was a great thing that you gave him that part on your show, but can you please give him another one that doesn't involve cowbells or any other sort of instruments? And so he does, and he creates Moochie, Smoochy's cousin, and when what was it, Merv Green, he was kind of the representative for one of the charities.
Who was the guy that played Merv Green? Because he played a part on Simpsons at one point. I can't remember his real name.
I know. Yeah. He's done a lot of work. Harvey Feinstein.
Yes, thank you.
Right. He was also Robin Williams' gay brother in Mrs. Doubtfire.
That's right.
And he was Jeff Goldblum's boss in Independence Day.
That's right.
Yes, why I know these things, I don't know, but they're only useful to me in certain situations, just like this. But yeah, Merv Green sends. What was that?
I remember him being Homer's assistant, Carl.
Right, Carl. But anyways, yeah. So Merv Green, the guy who's a representative of one of the charities, sends 2 goons to kill Smoochy, and he says, "Oh, just kill the rhino." But seeing as how he, Sheldon just created the character of Moochie, and Spinner, being, so in love, that he just, being, in love with Smoochy and just not, and he didn't take off his costume at the end of the show. And he's walking around, the two thugs off Moochie's Spinner Dunn, and of course that doesn't sit too well with Tommy, and they exact their revenge.
Yeah, and then the ice show is kind of like in remembrance of Spinner, and it's Moochie. Yeah, it was. The other really one of the other great parts too was one of the schemes that Rainbow Randolph pulled off to try to eliminate Smoochy. Mm-hmm. Was he kind of went in disguise and kind of it's like, oh, we need you for some charity for like to kind of do like a couple songs for this like kids charity. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. Would you be able to do it? It's like, yeah, okay. And so he's kind of, it's in this like abandoned warehouse out in the middle of nowhere.
This out in the industrial part of of the city, and there's bulldozers all around, And then, he goes up on stage and like, the spotlight's right in his face and in his eyes, and he can't really see anybody, and he starts playing his Smoochy songs. And then, he's like, and then like no one is singing along with him because he's, trying to get the kids to sing along, but no one is singing along. And so he finally says like, hey, can we, cut that spot and bring up the house lights? And then, when that happens, what, you're expecting to see, auditorium like, or whatever, filled with kids, but it just so happens to be a Nazi rally.
Yeah. Who also happen to love Smoochy for some reason? What the hell?
Right. It's like you see all these brown shirts and the SS uniforms, and then all of a sudden like the swastika banners like fall down, and one like right behind them, and then one guy just stands up and is like I don't know, like with like such great enthusiasm because I don't know, he loves Smoochy, and says like, hi Smoochy.
I about fell over when I saw that. I was like, I forgot about that scene. It's just like,
yeah, me too. I totally forgot about that scene too.
And then they vilify him because it was right after like the
right, SWAT, and then all of a sudden the police come and raid, because it's like an unlawful assembly, and so of course the headlines of this, in the papers and then in the news is that Smoochy's secret Nazi.
Yeah. Which is not unlike what stuff that's happening today.
Right,
all those
yeah.
secret Nazis.
Precisely.
Is Smoochy code for white nationalists?
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It's like, man, you kind of like, yeah, you can't help but see, it's like, they're telling they're telling us what was going to happen. And, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, it's crazy because like back then, like if we would heard stuff like that in 2002, it's like, you got to be fucking kidding. It's like, no, of course not. It's like it was supposed to be a joke, but now it's like this is the. I'm not gonna dive down that rabbit trail, but it's like, man, it's kind of become reality, which is kind of weird.
Well, yeah, well, okay, just to deviate really quickly. I'm not gonna spend too much time on this, but recently there was that promo for that CBS show, The Good Fight, where one of the characters is like speaking directly into the camera, talking about white nationalists and talking about how not all like speech should be tolerated, and then they reference Richard Spencer, who after Donald Trump was voted in president. During the inauguration, he was kind of out and about, and then like a news reporter was like talking to him, and all of a sudden he gets sucker punched. And I'm not saying that I agree with Richard Spencer's position, but that him getting sucker punched like that was pretty fucked up.
Yeah, I would agree. Like I don't agree with anything that guy has to say, but you don't just sucker punch somebody in the face like that.
Yeah, and I mean, it was crazy because like during like this promotion, like the characters like walking through the scene, and there's like kind of like almost like an Antifa style riot going on, but of course they try to make it more right leaning, and the rioters have like these red vests on, which I think is also kind of eliciting the imagery of the yellow vest protests that were going on in France. Just a few months ago, when all those people were protesting against was kind of the government just taking a shit on them because they were trying to get they're trying to take away like gas or they were jacking up the price of gas, which would have affected the kind of like the working class, the blue collar folks the most, like truckers and things like that, and farmers. But here's where it's really bad especially for CBS, because this character was talking about a real person. It wasn't as though he was talking about a fictional person that was part of that TV show, and that character on that TV show was a white nationalist or a Nazi. He was the promo is the fictional character in that show talking about an actual person and saying that it's okay to punch Nazis, not making any distinction between you know real life or the TV show or or delineating what makes who was a Nazi. So I think and really fast because they initially CBS initially put it up on their Twitter account, but they took it down real fast because that was a legitimate incitement to violence.
Yeah, well, I mean that's what a lot of those people are doing,
right?
Which
and,
is
yeah, and so it's like how fucking stupid are these people that that they did that they put out this thing, literally inciting violence. Yeah.
Well, that whole idea of punch a Nazi, but then they start calling everyone Nazi, so that which is just another now it's just a word for I disagree with you, Sue, Nazi. And
well, right, because it's not as though they're this person who's delivering this monologue was talking about a character in the TV show that happens to be a white nationalist or is somehow like a Nazi. The character referenced a real person, an actual person, right. Richard Spencer. And so now it's like you're blurring the lines here, and you're inciting people to attack people merely on the claim of being something and not being definitively something.
Yeah, yeesh.
So, which is scary. But anyways, back to Smoochy. Yeah, it's what was it? Rainbow Randolph eventually, he kind of gloats and goes to Nora and is like, "Oh yeah, I knew he was a Nazi," and he kind of lets it out that it was his, he was actually the one to set him up, and Sheldon is then eventually exonerated. And I think there's this funny scene where Rainbow Randolph is pushed to the brink, and he decides to go out in like this big spectacle, kind of like a la the Buddhist monks
that set themselves on fire.
Yeah, that set themselves on fire. So he goes in the middle of Times Square and he douses himself with some flammable liquid, and he's about to light himself on fire, and then this little girl comes up, is like, "No, Rainbow Randolph, don't." He's like, "Don't do that," and she blows out the match, and you think that it's like this great kind of bring you back from the edge moment, when all of a sudden Sheldon comes out of the studio, and all of a sudden like, "Hey everybody, it's Smoochy!" And then they go and they they go and they like leave Rainbow Randolph to go and like go and adore Smoochy, and like that was like when he like kind of loses it for like I think maybe like the third or fourth time in this movie.
No, so like the first time like he tries to get at Smoochy, I thought it was also kind of funny as well as like very creepy. Was where it was this one where like he was giving like cookies to the kids.
Right, yeah. Oh yeah, because like on the Smoochy show there's like a special like cookie time, and Rainbow Randolph switches the cookies for penis shaped cookies. And, yeah, but Sheldon being a smooth customer, he quickly switches it around. He's like, "Oh, look at this rocket ship," and he's like,
Woo!
and so he's like, "Woo!" And he's like, starts playing it with like it's a rocket ship, and then that's Rainbow Randolph comes and is like, "What are you talking about? That's a cock."
It's a cock and balls, you fucking idiot! It's like oh my god, it's such an awful, but like it's still a hilarious scene at the same time. It's
yeah.
Just,
what about when
really
What about when he calls in with like the death threat?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, it's like, and it's just like, hey, you motherfucker! It's rhino season. And I'm about to go on safari.
Yeah. Oh my gosh!
Man, Robin Williams was the best. Oh,
he was great in this film. I mean, he's a complete psychopath, which is which Robin Williams plays. He plays a good psychopath.
He does. I mean, this is kind of a more zany kind of psychopath because he did play scary psychopath in a few movies.
Yeah, very well. But no, this one was.
This one was a little bit more of an enjoyable type.
Yeah. Oh, it was great, and then but he ends up being kind of like Sheldon, being the guy that he is. Like he never like hated Rainbow Randolph. Like he's just like, I feel bad for the guy,
right? And like because he just showed compassion,
winning him over.
Sheldon's character, he just constantly showed like compassion to everyone, and even like to Rainbow Randolph, who tried to sabotage his show, who called in death threats on him, who sent him to a secret Nazi rally.
Yeah, and he still like showed him compassion and care. That's he's a pretty stand-up guy.
Yeah,
maybe naive, but pretty stand-up guy.
Right, naive but stand-up guy.
But yeah, it was. I really like this film. It was fun. It's funny. It's zany. It like the whole premise is so ridiculous. Like it's like Sesame Street and is going up against Mr. Rogers and like and the Muppets and like all these, like kind of. It's like
it's kind of pulling back the felt, as it were, on television, on children's television programming.
Yeah,
it's kind of like the seedy underside of it, and all of like the back, the backroom deals, and and all like the skimming off the top, and it's funny because it was kind of like a mafia. It was kind of like a mafia film, but just but a comedy.
Yeah, it's exactly what it was. It was great. I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad we watched this one again.
Yeah, I mean, me too. I'm glad to. I'm glad that that we decided to do comedies this month.
I think we needed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right.
Well, what do you give for ratings?
Huh?
What's your rating? What's your rating on this one?
I think I'm gonna give it a 4. I'm gonna give it a 4.
Very.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was just. I mean, looking back on it, it wasn't like the perfect movie, but given the performances, particularly from Robin Williams, and just like the kind of the zany, absurd premise of the movie, yeah, I definitely give it a 4.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with that too. I'm gonna give it a 4. I was gonna go 3.5, but after like kind of talking about it with you, I'm gonna go 4 just because of outside of because Sheldon I think was probably the weakest character out of all of them. But Robin Williams is great. All the Danny DeVito, Jon Stewart.
Well, because if you think about it, this movie really is about Robin Williams' character, even though because it's about Rainbow Randolph's redemption arc.
Yeah.
Because he first he's on top, and then he goes to like the scandal, and then he's like on the skids, and then he misplaces his anger at Smoochy when it really everything was like and he does kind of come to like this realization that all of his problems are his own. And then even like when they're going to try to assassinate Sheldon at the ice show, Rainbow Randolph is the one to go and uh, try and stop him, or try to stop the assassin.
But yeah, it was a fun, hilarious, zany movie, and it was just it was good. You should watch. Everyone should watch it. It's great.
Right. Yep. And I think is this the first time that we agree or that we rated it the same?
Not rated the same, but I think rated it the same. This high the same.
Well, I mean, yeah, okay, yeah. So this, rating this high, and it's the same. So
yeah, for like based on like since we're doing comedies, it is definitely that. It's very dark, but it's I would say for a comedy, definitely a 4 on this one.
All right, well, there you have it. Me and Robert in I think our first really high rating ever agree, and we give it a 4. We both definitely recommend this movie, especially if you just need a good laugh. I mean, you have the excellent performance by Robin Williams, so you are assured to laugh in this movie.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So do yourself a favor and check it out. And for next week, what's the movie for next week?
We're gonna do Ghostbusters next week.
Okay, yeah, the first Ghostbusters.
The real Ghostbusters.
Yeah, the 1984 Ghostbusters. I am so sad that we have to make that distinction.
There's a generation that's gonna doesn't realize that they're they're not
gonna realize that there was
it's not the first one.
Yeah, there was an original Ghostbusters. A good Ghostbusters. And this I know what you guys are thinking is like, because Ghostbusters isn't really a comedy. Well, we decided to do a horror comedy.
It is kind of a comedy, like you have.
Well, but there are definitely horror elements. So so it's a horror comedy.
And Bill Murray is just fantastic in it. And Bill Murray is fantastic in the film. He's hilarious.
Right. Yeah. I think. Yeah. He's like, if you're unfamiliar with his work, I mean, just like the one-liners and his delivery is just great.
Yeah. So we're gonna have a good time with that.
Oh, right. Next week's gonna be a pre-tape. Okay, so you won't be able to join in the conversation, but you can leave your thoughts in the comments.
Absolutely.
So, all right, that will do it for us tonight. I hope you guys were entertained. I had a good time. Did you have a good time, Rob?
I always have a good time, Andy.
All right. Well, that's it. There you have it. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to join us every Tuesday. Just not this coming Tuesday because it's going to be a pre-tape. Don't forget to check out the library of other shows we got going on. Circular Jerks podcast, Nocturnal Transmissions, Up by Up Down. Don't forget to follow our social media accounts, Twitter @PodcastCOJ and Instagram @Circle of Jerks Podcast. And for Robert and myself, we say thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.